But this is going to lead us into my scanner anomaly. So this scanner anomaly is about Star Citizen. I say Star Citizen, and it's really CIG's future funding model because it incorporates Star Citizen and Squadron 42.
And while
And
you
you're
could
gonna
do
have
that,
to,
I'm gonna go run. So
pardon me, you're gonna have to bear with me because all my notes are in OneNote because Nazeris and I use that in order to make notes and then be able to share them back and forth between each other. So, but I have all the tabs from my OneNote up in here, and so I will use the tabs in order to remind myself, why did I put that in there? But I sort of have a format in my head, but I just don't have a way to read it without just constantly going back and forth between windows, and that would be a little bit disorienting for all of you guys who are still watching and hanging out in chat. So we're going to start with the letter from the chairman. And this is the one that was at the end of 2022, 12/30/2022. And it's, let's see, down here. Final thoughts. So, looking back on 2022, it has been gratifying to see Cloud Imperium and the Star Citizen community grow. We ended the year with 861 employees. Write that down. Keep that figure in your head. And the community grew to more than 4 million accounts and 1.8 million backer accounts, accounts that have purchased Star Citizen. And now, obviously, there are plenty of people who have multiple accounts, multiple backer accounts. I am one of them. But even with the number of people that have multiple backer accounts, you're still looking, at a very large number of people that have backed the game. But that being said, we're the oh gosh, what is the term that CR used? There's a term that CR used in order to relate to the percentage of accounts that people that have shown interest in the game, people that come and played in free flies versus people that have actually backed. So you have people who have shown a lot of interest but are still on the fence, and then the people that have actually backed the game. And so right now we're at a let's call it a commitment rate. We're at a commitment rate of say probably about 33%. So out of the 100% of people that have shown interest in the game based off the 4 million accounts, only a third of them have actually, backed the game. And let's just say, 1.3 to 1.5 million, individuals have actually backed the game. And we know that concurrency, in 2022 was, the best it's ever been. The number of individual players playing the game. Mike Lansing says Space Whales. We're going to get into that. Conversion rate. Thank you, North End Trooper. I appreciate that. Yeah, I brain farted. It's in my notes, but I didn't want to switch back over and disorient you guys. But if you go back up here to towards the top, let's see, where is it? There we go. So out of that conversion rate, say it's 1.3 million to 1.5 million, over 1 million unique players logged into the Star Citizen and played the game. So we don't know, out of the people who backed versus the people who created an account to do the free fly, how many that is. But 1 million unique people logged in to play the game. And they did so for more than 46 million hours. You're also having great concurrency monthly, monthly active users, with a 33% increase over 2021, with a high of 400,000 people in May alone playing the game. So that's pretty incredible. So let's look at what that means for funding. So if you're not aware, oh, dang it, why did it do that? I already had you open. If you're not aware of this, you've probably seen these images get shared off of Reddit. Weird, haven't gotten that error before. But this is the CCU game.app Star Citizen funding dashboard. And here I'll put this link into... hold on, I'm going to go into OCS or OBS. Put that in there. so that you guys have the link. There we go. So this is the funding
here's the
dashboard.
CCU game.
Yep.
Yes.
And so we can see that so we haven't gotten the 2022 financial report for CIG. We'll get that in December of 2023. It's always a year in arrears. So like December of this year is when we got the financial report for the year of 2021. And we're going to look at that here in a minute. But we can see based off the pledge tracker that CIG made $113 million in pledges. So that is people buying ships, people buying things off the store, whether it's items or UAC, all those things fall into pledges. And we're actually off to a very good start this year as well. January was the best January we have ever had. February fell off by a long shot, but March picked back up and was, March is the best March that we've ever had. There was a number of content creators who, because there was a glitch in the code for the funding tracker, it stopped recording after the 12th. And so we got to the end of the month and they're like, look, it was the worst March ever. And then Jorun from Star Citizens, I think, was like, no, there's a glitch in the thing. You guys are all being emotional and reactionary without actually looking at the data. And it was kind of embarrassing for a few very prominent content creators, not going to name names, but who went on Twitter and said, oh, look, we're having a downturn in funding. What does this mean? And it's like, it means that you didn't read the data because March is actually the best March we've ever had. Now, that being said, with the issues that we have had with 318 launching, right now, here we are in April. So it says, we're at the 76% as far as pledge increase delta the previous year, but we're only 10 days into April. And so if we continue on our current trajectory in April will be lower than last year, but we will probably still be at about the same mark just because we started at a higher level. So going into May, we're going to be at a similar point.
Yeah, I imagine that will actually happen. We'll have a pretty meh April.
Oh yeah,
but I imagine we'll kill records for May.
Mm-hmm.
With links coming out, especially.
And who knows what else?
Yes, like it's a military event, so there's gonna be more armed things coming out.
And with PES having gone through all of its issues and us getting the fixes for 3.18.1 and 3.18.2, I feel like 3.19 is probably going to be, I'd be willing to bet 3.19 is going to be the stablest Invictus launch we've had. Just because every year it's a shit show, but it's a less of a shit show every year. Well, every year the Invictus launch week has had lots of issues with concurrency. Well, we're going to have just gone through with 3.18 and had a bunch of fixes with 3.18.1, 3.18.2 leading into 3.19. So we'll see. But this is where the funding is. But all of this money, if we're looking specifically at 2022, all of this money has just been from ship skins, armor stuff. This does not include money that CIG gets from outside sources. They don't specifically name what those are, but different contract things, especially payments that they get based off of, hey, we built a studio here and we're hiring all these people, and so they get, tax breaks and that sort of stuff, money given to them, based off of how they operate the business. But it also doesn't include subscriptions. So we'll look at that here in a minute. So here is the CIG financial report for 2021. And this is public information, this is not secret, and CIG's financials all the way back to here are public information. It is a requirement by the law with the United Kingdom for them to publish all this information because of the way they operate their business. And you can read the 2012 through 2015 is a composite report 2017 is a composite report because they started doing it in 2017 when they became required to do so. And so, but all the financial information is available, up to, but a year in arrears. And so it's really hard to see in this image because it's grainy, and even if you open it in a separate tab, and zoom in, it's still not very legible. But you can see for 2021, they had total revenue was 100 million and 700 over 100 million dollars, so just shy of 101 million. But the pledges was only 86.4 million, and so you can see that right here, 86.4 million. So like, oh, okay, well, where's that other 14 million coming from? Well, 14 million, nearly 5 million was from subscriptions. We have 5 million people worth, or $5 million worth of subs every year. And then nearly 10 million, a pretty significant increase over 2020, but less than 2020 or 2019, was from other income, which is incentives, partnerships, and other. And they talk more about what those are in the monthly report, or in this financial report, but I'm not going to get into that. So you can see that everybody's like, oh, they make so much money. They make so much money. Hold on. So let's go down here. So total cost, capital expenditures, and investments. So this is how much it cost to run CIG for that same year. They made just shy of $101 million in 2021, but they also spent not quite $100.5 million. So they had, let's see if they show it down here. Cumulative net position. This is in thousands. Was they only profited just not even $400,000 in 2021. We're like, oh, how's that possible? They made $100 million. Are they wasting our money? What are they spending it on? Well, if you read the report, you can see that not only are they have to spend money on the salaries for the devs, they also have to spend money on contracted dev costs. So this is your Turbulent and other companies that they're contracted with for development costs. Publishing and marketing. Guess what? Publishing and marketing, the marketing budget is actually a small fraction of this. We don't know what it is exactly, but it's very little. But this is how, a substantial portion of this orange bar is how much CIG has to pay to Amazon for hosting the game. That's insane. For we talked about the concurrency and how many people are actually playing Star Citizen. And we're like, oh, well, that's pretty good. We're getting a lot of people playing. Well, that doesn't remotely compare to some of the big games that we're going to talk about later on, and it still costs them, literally 15, 20 plus $million just to publish and host the game on Amazon. It's a crap ton of money. Other dev costs. So this is salaries, and then this would be benefits and such like that. And what this means is, they're bringing in a good chunk of money, with ship sales and stuff like that, but they're spending it as fast as they can, because if they don't spend that money, they get the dick taxed out of it, for lack of a better term, but B, not spending this money on hiring developers and expanding CIG in order to by expanding CIG, the entire studio, and hire more developers, it allows them to increase the throughput of development. So you can't add more developers to most things in order to make it go faster, but you can add more developers to the overall project so that you can work on more things at the same time in order to reach a cumulative goal sooner. And that's why they keep on spending money in order to, spending as much money as they bring in order to grow the company, in order to reach that eventual goal of beta, that eventual goal of completing Squadron 42, that eventual goal of release, whatever that looks like, sooner rather than later, instead of just sitting on money for no reason. And that's where the cumulative net position comes in. You can see all the way down here that, so in 2012, they made $6 million. And then in 2013, they made, this is, so at the top they say it's net pledges and income less cost, capex, and investments. Well, their operating costs early on, as they're trying to grow the company, were very low. And so they're taking in more money than they could spend because they're trying to grow the company, and they're just starting out, and they had a lot of people coming in. They didn't know what to do with all this money, and so they couldn't grow fast enough. Well, at this point, and so they, by the end of 2014, they had a $25 million surplus that they're sitting on, and finally the cost of doing business outpaced how much money they're bringing in, but they are able to continue to hire and continue to grow because they were sitting on this surplus. In 2015, still at a $19 million surplus, and they evened out in 2016, and they still had over a $19 million surplus. And they continued to grow in 2017, and they still had a $14 million surplus. And then in 2018, this is where things start to get interesting, because they had this surplus of $14 million, and they continued to grow the company. But because more and more people were buying into the game and playing the game, you have your publishing costs with Amazon, going from a little bit, because obviously there was nothing here, and then you've got a little bit of hosting and stuff going on, but these costs are going up and up and up because more and more people are buying the game, but also more and more people are playing the game. So your cost of operation is going through the roof as well. And so in order to offset those costs, so that way they're not spending, a big issue is there a lot of this in the red right here is them spending money that they gets brought in from people pledging for the game and having to spend that money on your platform costs, on your hosting with Amazon. And so part of the deal with them bringing in the investors, and we'll talk more about that here in a second, was to use this money, the minority investment here in 2018, and then again at the end of 2019, they announced it at the beginning of 2020, was to use this money for not only marketing, but to help cover the costs of the platform, the hosting, the ability for us to play the game as they're developing it live. They didn't want to spend, they didn't want to have to not be able to grow the company and expand the development of Star Citizen and Squadron 42. So they brought on this investment to cover those costs and the costs of marketing so that they could still, it wouldn't slow down development. They could continue to expand CIG, so they could continue to expand the throughput, so we could get to that eventual goal of Squadron 42 release, and Star Citizen beta, an eventual release. And it wasn't until 2020 that the amount of money coming in, back up here, they did not plan on 2020 being like this. They knew they were going to continue to have growth, and that the amount of growth was close enough that they could continue to eat off that surplus to cover their platform costs, in order to, by the time they reached their goal and spent that money, that the game would be selling enough and that they would be able to sell Squadron 42 and have enough people backing that it would make up the difference. Well, 2020 came along and funding went through the roof. And then 2021 came along and funding went through, even bigger. And then we just made, this is the total funding, but 86 million of it was pledges. Well, we just made like $27 million more in pledges in 2022 than we did over 2021. So this purple bar right here is actually way up here, just the purple, not even counting this stuff. And so we're looking at total funding for CIG for 2022 being, if last year the subscriptions and other income was just shy of 15 million, if we even use that again, we're looking at total funding for CIG being just shy of right about $130 million, when total funding for 2021 was $100 million. They made about $30 million more in 2022, probably $25 to $30 million more than they did over 2021. That's a huge increase. That's a increase that's as big or almost as big as the increase going from 2019 to 2020. which is just nuts. And the CIG is basically keeping pace with that right now, as of this, as of us speaking, right now. So why is this important? And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because people think that they're just wasting our money, blah blah blah. Well, they're continuing to grow the company in order to we talked about flight time and throughput. Flight time is with the procedural locations tool with Rastar. They're building all these tools so that way the flight time for them to do a thing goes from, instead of being 3 months to 3 weeks, or 3 months to 13 days. That's shortening the flight time. So that same amount of people can do the same amount of work in the fraction of the time. But they're also growing the company to increase the throughput. So that way, okay, we had 10 people that instead of taking this long to do this much work, they're taking this long. Well, now we're adding 20 people. And the growth, the amount of development work that can get done, across the various deliverables of Star Citizen Squadron 42 becomes exponential in nature. And if you've been paying attention to what Jared has said in ISC, and I think he said it in the most recent SCL, where he talks about, I should have clipped it, and I feel dumb for not doing it. Actually, I think it's at the end of this ISC. Hold on.
Of building.
So, as it was explained to me while you're pulling that up, in the cumulative net position, black is bad at the top, because that means that they're sitting on money that was just taxed through the nose for. And just because having that money is bad, they want to be in the red, because one, that means they're putting that money into
building interior modules that will...
They're not going to get taxed by just holding on to it. And that's a big kind of indicator of what happened in 2020. Because they ended up $7.3 million in the black. That was not supposed to happen. And that's, like, even in 2021, they weren't able to get rid of enough money. Still, it was $349,000 in the black. They want it to be in the red. They need it to be in the red. So when you see, like, wow, they're spending a lot of money, those offices, even with those office purchases for 2019, 2021, like, they're still in the black. They need to get rid of that money.
Yeah, you do not want to be, when you are developing a product and growing a company, you do not want to be sitting on money. You don't want to, where'd we go? So the,
Yeah, just scroll down.
Yeah, so here we are. This is 2021. They just made a crap ton more money in 2022, and they probably they hired a bunch of people. They are building the new studio in Manchester. They finally moved into it at the end of this year. The same with the one in Frankfurt. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an expansion of the Austin and Santa Monica studios. And they're also investing in Turbulent. And even with all that, I think we're probably still going to see a substantial addition to the cumulative net position in 2022 when that report comes out, which is, they brought in all this money. It covered their costs of development. It covered their platform costs, and they, as well as all their capital expenditures, and with growing the company, and they still had are going to have had a substantial surplus, because they're bringing in 2021, 2022, 2020, they brought in money faster than they expected, and so they couldn't plan for how to spend that money. And so they're trying to spend that money. They're trying to hire people. That's why there's so many jobs available on both the Turbulent and the CIG website. And it's why CIG is continuing to expand. And we're going to talk about that some more here in a second. But, you can see, let's see, right. Play it from here.
Nice.
There's only
And this
one open
process is
position
repeated in all...
Don't interrupt.
Oh, Montreal is... Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were playing a video. Sorry.
Yep.
Nice. And this process is repeated in all subsequent rooms, and overall it's another terrific example of how game development is exponential and absolutely non-linear in progress.
And that is a quote that Jared has essentially repeated multiple times in ISC, in SCL, and Jared is trying to beat this into our heads for a lot of the last 2 years with the video content that comes out, that they are shortening flight time and increasing throughput throughout the company. And Nazeris and I have been, with all of our different segments that we've been working on, we've been trying to say that this is why they're doing this. Well, they're able to do that because of not the development breakthroughs, but also because of the funding that's come in. But so let's see, headcount. Okay, so at the end of 2021, there were 748 people on the CIG payroll. That's total headcount. And now, as of the end of the letter from the chairman, they said they're at 860. So in the span of a year, they hired 13 people? Yeah, 113 people. And I don't think this is counting Turbulent. But we know that Turbulent, I forget where the post was, but they were up to like 50 something. It was that last count over the last several months. We know that the goal for that studio was to grow it to 100 developers working, building star systems, and they're only halfway there, and we know what they're doing. But at the same time, let's go further into that the Manchester studio that they just finally finished moving into at the end of 2022. And so they finished and they're moving into, so right down here at the bottom, this is the part that people miss. So when this was announced, employs more than 400 people worldwide. And so this was in November 2021, when we're at this point of 748, people working for CIG. With 400 employees based at its current UK studio headquartered in Wilmslow, Cheshire. So 400 of those 748 people were at the, we're going to be going to the Manchester office. But the goal for that office was to create 700 jobs in the metropolitan area by 2023. So they wanted to add 300 more people by the end of this year, 2023, that we're in. And right now, they are right at about halfway to that goal, and they're so they've got a ways to go. They're a little bit over halfway, because they went from 700 and something. They added basically about 140 is where we're at now. But then going from beyond 2023, they want to add an additional 300. So within the next 5 years. So that's looking at this is in 2021. So 2020 by the end of 2026. They want to have gone from 400 people in Manchester to 1,000. So they want to add 600 people to CIG just in Manchester. That's not Frankfurt. That's not Austin. That's not Santa Monica. That's not Turbulent. They want to add 600 people to CIG Manchester. Basically over the next 3.5 years. 3 years and some change. So to put that into context, let's go back to the headcount analysis and the 2021 report. So when all of CIG was, let's pick 2019, when all of CIG was 600 people, the salaries and other dev costs at 2019 was, let's see, that's 39 million plus another 8 million. So let's round that up to about $50 million. $50 million for salaries and dev costs for 600 people. So they want to add, and when this thing was written about the Manchester studio, they were telling us that they wanted to add another $50 million just for Manchester of dev costs to the 2021 total. So 2021 dev costs, so salaries and other dev costs, we've got nearly 12 million in other dev costs, and I think that's 51 million right there. So 63 to 65 million dollars. And $65 million plus another $50 million. So, and again, we're only counting Manchester. So by the end of 2026, they want, if no other growth happens for any of the other offices, and we're just looking, at an increase in the Manchester cost of doing business, and this is just rough table napkin math, you're looking at capital expenditures, total costs of running CIG of being $150 million. So that's a lot of money, considering that with here in 2022, we had our biggest year yet, just an absolute monster year over 2021, and we're estimating that they brought in about $130 million. So obviously, they want to grow in Santa Monica. They want to grow in Frankfurt. They want to go in Austin. Turbulent, the contracted dev costs, they're going to continue to grow. This blue box right here is going to continue to get bigger as Turbulent continues to grow. And CIG was in Korea, in out of province, county, I don't know what you'd call it, a state in Korea. They were meeting with government officials in a part of Korea whose sole job is to bring software developer jobs to their area. So I guarantee you. Oh my gosh, sole job. Naz will be here all week, folks. But I would not be surprised if we saw an announcement of CIG expanding, because they are now going to be they're going to be hosting the game in China. They're expanding the game in Asia, because obviously it's a huge market. Well, they're going to want to have a studio to support that, but they also they need to continue to branch out in order to be able to hire developers, because it's a very competitive market. So if you're fishing in only one pond, you're limiting how many developers you can actually hire to work on your game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they built a studio in Korea or somewhere else in Asia to help support that. Maybe even in Australia, who knows? But obviously Korea, software development's a pretty big deal, especially gaming. But so we know we can, just by doing some table napkin math, they're going to need to earn a lot more money just to continue to fund the ongoing development of the game in 2026, with just the bare minimum of increase, not even the other increases for the projected increases for other parts of the studio, as well as Turbulent, and opening new studios. So you're looking at operating costs that are going to be, at the end of 2026, sitting probably between the 150 to 200 million, 150 on the low end, probably 200 million on the higher end, annually, every year. And I'm sorry, if you think that they're going to be able to make that kind of money on selling just ships and a small amount of subscriptions, you're on drugs. So let's talk about how CIG is likely, potentially likely going to be solving this problem. So we've talked about the new studio opening. They took in these minority investments. The first one was in 2018. So let's see. So here we go. Yeah. So December 2018 is when they announced it as part of a letter from the chairman. So CR says, so it's with this that I would like to announce that we have closed a minority investment, and there's another link to a fact sheet that we'll look at briefly, into Cloud Imperium US and UK with Clive's family, and Clive and Keith, they talk about who the investors are. Keith Snoot's Entertainment, for $46 million for approximately 10% of the shares in Cloud Imperium. So they took that first minority investment in 2018, at the end of 2018, for a 10% stake, non-controlling with those investors. And then again, here's the Cloud Imperium investment fact sheet. Oh, did I miss the other one? Oh, wait a minute. Where is that? Okay. Well, anyway, so that was the first round of investment. And then if you go back to here and we go up to the income, or where is it? No, it's this one down here. So here's that minority investment in 2018. And then it was announced in the beginning of 2020, but the second round of investment from the same group for another $17.25 million in 2019. So right now that group has I think it's a 15% non-controlling stake in Cloud Imperium Games. And when they made that first investment, the investment, they have to have somebody come in and audit the company to sort of figure out what it's worth. And they valued CIG in 2018 at being worth $500 million based off of, all of the capital that they had, as well as, earning potential. Earning potential being in 2018, they made, $50 million and, projected earnings and stuff like that. So obviously CIG has more than doubled their earnings, and they're significantly larger than they were in 2018. And so CIG is probably, valued at about $1 billion right now. So for investors, they have made a pretty good return on their investment, in terms of their shares have doubled in value, essentially, which is a pretty good return on investment. But investors, and big, venture capitalists, they don't want to just be like, oh, sweet, I doubled my money, and then cash out. They want to not only double, if not quadruple, increase their money by an order of magnitude, but they also want to be making big old dividends the entire time. And I couldn't find in which report it was, but it was either in 2020, I think it was in 2020, they talked about how much they paid in dividends to these investors. And in the dividends are based off of a percentage of total earnings, and so they basically paid them. It was like a 1.5% off of total earnings in dividends. They paid them $1 million in some change, which is nothing. They invested $63 million and they got they made $1 million and some change back in a year. Well, in order to make their money back, they'd either have to sell their shares, or they would have to hang on to their shares and wait forever based off of dividends to make their money back. That's not how investors work. That's not how venture capitalists work. So how do those venture capitalists go from making a modest return on investment, by their standards, to making a big return on investment? Well, CIG not only needs to be able to bring in a crap ton more money to be able to cover their development costs, but they also need to bring in a lot more money to give the returns to these investors that those investors expect, as well as to continue to work on other projects, and develop Star Citizen, Squadron 42 episodes, single player campaigns, what have you, for years to come. So let's look at what else occurred in 2018, and 2019 that was going on that these investors may have had to influence their decision making. So if you remember, at the end of 2017 is when we got the vertical slice. It was end of 2017, is when we got the vertical slice. Now, the vertical slice was really cool, and everybody goes back and looks at it, and they did a really good job with it, and it's a really good. It's a vertical slice. It's meant to show you a snapshot of what the intent is for the game. Guess who else vertical slices are for? Investors. Oh. So, do you think it's a coincidence that we got a vertical slice of Squadron 42 within a year of them closing the deal, because these deals take a long time to fall through. The audit process, all the legal stuff. They were talking to these investors, a year or more before they actually made the investment and money changed hands. So that vertical slice was marketing for not only players but also the investors, 100%, because CIG and CR sold them on the idea of, hey, you can invest money into Cloud Imperium games. This is the game we're building. This is why it's unique. This is why it has this sort of earning potential. Blah blah blah. And guess what else they sold them on? Guess what else was going on in 2018 and 2019? Goddamn Fortnite. Fortnite.
Still going on.
In 2018, 2018, Fortnite made $2.4 billion. $2.4 billion. In 1 year, Fortnite made nearly 5 times what CIG has made in over a decade. $2.4 billion. And Fortnite released, first year of release was 2017 into 2018. So Fortnite released in 2017, and in its first year, 2017 crossing over into 2018, they had 125 million players. And 125 million players brought in $2.4 billion. That's just absolutely flipping nuts. It was, really unheard of. Fortnite, for the most part, really, got the whole thing started. But how does Fortnite make its money? Microtransactions. Fortnite's free to play. Fortnite makes big, just absolutely stupid amounts of money on microtransactions for stupid cosmetic shit. And I say stupid cosmetic shit. I've spent money on skins, not for Fortnite, but for Star Citizen. But people are. This is simple consumer psychology. People are far more willing to part with $1 here, $5 there, multiple times throughout the year for little things that give them little bits of joy than they are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a single purchase. And that's the big difference between Star Citizen and things like Fortnite, and we'll get into Warzone here in a second, and where this is going. Because the reason I decided to do this segment right now is we just released, Star Citizen CIG just released PES. And PES is the technology that allows for everything to persist. And that, it's not only a really cool, has a lot of great gameplay potential, it also is what will allow for infinite customization potential. And we just, Nazeris, and I just went over the Roadmap Roundup, and the progress tracker, shiny tracker reports, there's persistent hangers, there's persistent habs. We already know that you'll be able to customize your ships. And we're going to look at the pledge store. You can buy skins for your ships. You can buy all sorts of armor and weapons for customization purposes. It's the same thing, but CIG hasn't been highlighting it because it's not a big part of the game right now, and they've been building the technology to make it to really expand the potential of customization. And we all, Nazeris and I are good friends of Paul's. We're big fans of the Astropub, and Office Hours and Captain's Table. And Paul always says the end game of every MMO is fashion. Well, it's not just fashion for your character. No one is taking it to the to the level that Star Citizen is when it comes to customization. Because not only are you going to be able to build your own outpost and customize that, but you will be able to have your apartment, on New Babbage and customize that. You'll be able to have customize the interior of your ship. You be able to have ungodly amount of customization options for your character, and certain things. All these things will be available in game. and you can do it in game. But if you don't want to grind for it, you can always buy UEC to buy it in game, or you can buy it directly off the website, however they're going to incorporate it. But that's where the money is. And everybody's like, well, there's no way Star Citizen is ever going to have 125 million players. So I completely agree. Star Citizen as a MMO is never going to have that kind of player bandwidth. If we get to a tenth of that, I'll be absolutely thrilled. But if you think about how much money a tenth of, if 125 million people spent $2.4 billion, if Star Citizen on the low end, let's say Star Citizen, players had the same rate, end up having the same rate of payment for microtransactions, for customization options that Fortnite players. And it's not going to be the same, but, we'll make up the difference with the fact that you have more options. If Star Citizen gets a tenth of the player base, if we reach 12.5 million accounts and people playing the game, we have a much higher conversion rate than we do now. Well, a tenth of $2.4 billion is still $250 million. It's still $250 million a year. And that that alone exceeds the operating costs, that we're estimating on the high end. That's just for microtransactions, and that's just for Star Citizen, the MMO. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. So, Warzone, which another very popular game. If we go down to the bottom of this article, in 2020, Warzone made almost $2 billion. In 2021, they made, again, like another $2 billion. So, comparable. There's room in this market for more games. People, it's not a theory. It is a hard, economic and consumer psychology fact that gamers will pay microtransactions for the ability to customize their characters. And Star Citizen aims to let you customize your character and everything else that you own in game. And Warzone had about the same number of players over the same period of time. Over 100 million people played Warzone in its first year of release, from early 2020 to same period 2021. So it's very consistent across the genre. And Star Citizen doesn't need to have these kinds of populations. Star Citizen and CIG don't have to make that kind of money off of microtransactions alone, because Star Citizen is working on a diversified funding model. Because not only do they have the MMO, but they also have the single-player campaign, which is going to be 3 episodes, and we're probably going to see more single-player campaigns as they continue to grow CIG and add more people to the development pool to further increase throughput, to allow them to work on more projects at the same time, releasing more products over the same period of time. But Nazeris and I we just showed you the progress tracker and the Delta report and the deliverables report. And Nazeris, what was one of the things that we noted, that there's a big team, or not a big team, but a small team making a lot of changes to an outdated part of the game.
Arena Commander. I was just about to say something like, is Arena Commander going to show up in this? Because just imagine for 2 seconds they make REC purchasable.
Yeah, or whatever they end up doing.
I mean, just that alone, like, it's a competitive game mode. People will do anything to buy the biggest, baddest shit, the biggest, baddest weapons. And
to paint it whatever they want, because...
Exactly! Like, oh my god!
We just looked at Fortnite and Warzone, which is really just customization of your character. Well, your avatar in World of Tanks and World of Warships and War Thunder is a vehicle, and people still spend microtransactions to get unique vehicles and different skins for their vehicles and such. Same thing. And CIG is putting a ton of development effort into updating they say Arena Commander, but it's the whole suite of game modes outside of the MMO. And right now they're working
arcade modes.
Yeah, the arcade modes. Right now they're working on Star Marine, they're working on Arena Commander, they're working on the race modes of Arena Commander. And once they get those up to snuff, they're going to be working on Theaters of War as well.
Still exists, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah. So you have the MMO with it, customization options out the wazoo, far more than any other MMO has ever done. And you're going to have the arcade modes, which is essentially what Warzone, and Fortnite are, are arcade modes. And so you have options for people who want to play an MMO to customize their characters. You have options for people who want to do shorter game match type modes. What would you call that, Nazeris? There's got to be a term for it. But people who don't want to play an MMO, they just want to hop in the game and play. Well, you have options for them to customize their character too. You could make it so that way, you buy it in Arena Commander and you also get it in the PU. And then you also have a game mode in Theaters of War that will, scratch the itch of Battlefield type players. So you've got Call of Duty type players, you've got Battlefield type players. You've got people who are interested in War Thunder, World of Tanks.
On top of that,
World of Planes, all that.
On top of that, you even have per system. You have different types of game genres in there. Like you could have a system that's based on Tarkov.
Racers.
You could have a Tarkov in Star Citizen.
Yeah, and how many racing games are out there? There's a crap ton. Star Citizen is hitting a bunch of genres, and that's why I keep on mentioning throughput, because they have developed. Nazeris and I have covered the tools ad nauseum. Well, the tools don't not only help you build Star Citizen and take Star Citizen to that next level, they also use those same tools and can use those same tools to build maps and locations, as well as more vehicles. They're making tools for stuff for your characters as well, so that you have all this. You're increasing the throughput for not only building Star Citizen, for not only building follow-on episodes of Squadron 42 or other campaigns, but also for expanding those arcade modes. So that there's a lot more variety. And that's the big difference, is these other huge companies haven't invested in the tools to increase the throughput for the development of their game, because they've gone for the low-hanging fruit. And they've made a crap ton of money on that low-hanging fruit. Well, CIG has taken the longer route by investing in the tools and the development of tools, so that way they could hit a lot more markets with a lot more depth. And they don't have to, the Star Citizen as an MMO, the MMO and the space game is kind of niche, but everything they're adding to it isn't niche, and all the arcade modes aren't niche, and they don't have to have 100 million players playing Star Citizen, but they can get tens of millions of players playing any combination of Star Citizen, the arcade modes, and Squadron 42, and that diversifies your funding pool, which is what allows you to get far more than the $130 million they made last year. That's what allows them to fund the ongoing development of a company that's going to be costing $200+ million a year, over the next, by 2025, 2026. But if the company costs $250 million a year to run, but CIG is making, $500 million a year, $1 billion a year off of all of these, off of this diverse product set that they're marketing to a very wide range of gamers across multiple platforms. That's how the investors, where'd they go, who put in a little bit of money, relatively for them, tens of millions of dollars, are making a return on investment of hundreds of millions of dollars, because now you have CIG that was worth $500 million when they brought in $50 million. Well, now they're bringing $500 million a year, and they're worth $5 billion. And their stake in, your 15% stake in a $500 million company became a 15% stake in a $5 billion company, and you're getting dividends on all of the profit that CIG is bringing in. That's where the funding model is going. And I've got a few clips just because I was...
Back to the...
Stop. So I grabbed a few clips from the most recent Inside Star Citizen because these, when I watched this video and I saw these clips, I was already working on this scanner anomaly and I had it in my head and I was taking notes. But these clips are just in the last couple of weeks highlight perfectly where CIG is going with these customization options and what the now that PES is in the main dev branch and all the developers know what they can do with it. And now they're going hog wild with your customization options, and those things are going to start to be not only available in game for all of us, for me, the loot goblin, but also available to buy. Because sometimes you just want something and you don't want to have to go looking for it or spend money in game. You just want it in your inventory forever. That's why I have certain skins. So let's watch this first clip. This first one is the clip from. Actually, I better turn down the volume just a little bit on this. This first one is regarding the your HAB. Congratulations. This is persistent HABs at work.
And here we are.
Back to the Interactables team, they've also been prototyping a new way to hang a variety of posters on the walls of the player HABs and spacecraft with these new, expanding electronic devices that could let you decorate any space that's marked up for them. The prototyping here is using common adverts for in-universe events, but the possibilities of this feature become apparent very quickly in allowing players to not only decorate their spaces, but to collect and memorialize important moments from their time in the persistent universe, to take missions to set up flyers for in-game shops or events, post bulletins for bounty missions, and much, much more. And this last...
So this is why whenever there's an ISC or an SCL, I generally watch it 2 to 3 times. And when I watch these, I watch them with the subtitles on because I want to not only watch what's going on, but I want to read what is coming out of Jared's mouth, because everybody gets distracted by the pictures and they don't hear what Jared is saying, and so they forget these things. And they, the Interactables team is what was 100% made in order to take advantage of PES and then allow for customization options. 100%. A, it makes the game more diegetic and interesting, but B, everything that they're going to be doing, it is expanding on tech and showing the potential for what you can do for customization. And they're just barely scratching the surface with your persistent HAB, and we know that they're going to be working on persistent hangers here, like right now. Let's watch the next clip real quick. And this one, yeah, it's just more the
see all you out there on the internet's like, these Star Citizen fish look great. I'm gonna know you don't listen to a word I'm saying. My feelings will be hurt.
Meanwhile, the Interactables team, formerly known as the Props team, have been running through and physicalizing a bunch of assets for the persistent universe, like these weights for gyms like the ones you might find in New Babbage. Similar to the fish we just watched, this is also before animation has had their chance to contribute. So let's not judge the throwing form being displayed here. Still, it's nice to see even the littlest things in the verse behave naturally with realistic mass and physics whenever possible. This effort to make things behave as you'd expect them to also extends to the coffee machines of the verse, with a pass recently done to go through and repair their broken functionality. Now, I did consider turning this section into an update on either bartender or mess hall features, just for old time's sake, but someone who will go unnamed stopped me. Just know that there are heroes out there looking out for each and every one of you. Also, it looks like the team developed a few new coffee mugs along the way. We'll just let this video play for a bit, see a couple coffee cups in action, and think about how much bartender stuff I'm not talking about right now.
Also,
Interactables, and things that you can interact with that allow you to customize your ship, your hab, your outpost, your hangar, everything, all the things. And let's see, there's this last clip.
Also in white boxes, the pre-production blockouts for a variety of building interior modules that will fit inside the towering skyscrapers of New Babbage on Microtech, being developed and tested in situ simultaneously to work out and discover anything developers might not have considered or recognized as necessary in the original mandate. The idea here is that once the player lands, they would enter this particular interior from the very top, encountering a lobby and expected elevators. Then, after a brief trip down, emerge into a number of different interior modules such as block of player apartments seen in the example here. And speaking of modular
player apartments, so not just persistent habs, persistent habs, but persistent apartments. Apartments that you can buy in game using UEC, or you can buy with UEC that you bought outside of game in order to own that apartment. You have that virtual real estate, and then you can buy little customization options, or you can fill it with things you find out from out the verse. But everything you need. If you remember, like I played Star Wars Galaxies back in the day, and they just a tiny fraction of what they were trying to do here. But you can see right here that CIG is ramping up for a not only substantial increase in players, but also an exponential increase in the ability of players to customize everything about their interactions with the game. And that's a market opportunity. A market opportunity that with every other big game that is making a crap ton of money right now, that is proven to make money and help and fund your company. And that is how CIG, from a holistic point of view, with the arcade game modes, the infinite customization options, your episodes of single player campaigns, the customization crossover between the PU and the arcade modes, and then the massive opportunities for player ownership of things within the game for you to be able to customize, where you have a lot of voluntary options for microtransactions that you can buy this in game, you can earn it in game. If you don't have time to grind, or you just want it now because with our consumer economy right now, the patience is not a thing. We're not very good at that. You can just spend $1 or $3 or $5 to get these things, or get packs of these things, or just buy the UEC to buy them in game whenever you come across something. That's where CIG goes with making money. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I couldn't find the original source for this, but if you remember, and if you were paying attention to this back when Invictus Launch Week was going on last year, obviously at Invictus Launch Week they sold whole limited ships like the Idris and the Javelin and the Kraken, both vanilla and privateer. And I was looking for the original data from what happened last year, but I remember having this conversation on Reddit. And this last year, even though Invictus Launch Week made a ton of money, it took long. These whole limited ships were available for longer periods of time than they ever have before. And I think that this, and this is partly speculation, but it makes sense when it comes to consumer psychology, is that every year as they add more and more players to the game, as we get more people buying into the game, that is what drives the algorithm that says, okay, we're going to sell this many Krakens, this many Idrises, this many Javelins. We don't know what those numbers are, but that's how it works. Well, obviously we had a lot more people coming in, and so we had more of these whole limited ships available. And you would think with all those more people, well, they're going to buy up those ships. Well, it turns out that they sold slower this last year, and it's the rate at which those sold has gone down, over time, relative to when they were first released. And it's because I think it's because more and more people that are coming in are the people that will spend small amounts of money, your standard gaming consumers who will spend, small amounts of money on microtransactions, but aren't willing to part with hundreds of dollars for big expensive ships. And as this these lines are working on their way towards intersecting, but we're going to get more out of, we talked about how we might be able to see, a fraction of the type of the number of players for, Star Citizen and its multiplayer game modes that Fortnite and Warzone enjoy, but as more and more of those people come over and start experiencing the game modes and what CIG has to offer, fewer and fewer as a percentage of those people are going to be willing to part with hundreds of dollars at a time for a spaceship. But CIG can still earn their money little bits at a time with microtransactions throughout the year. And that's where the funding is, the real funding is going to go. I think they're going to stop selling ships? No, I think they're going to continue to sell game packages with ships, to a certain extent. I think, and they're obviously going to continue to develop ships, but it's not the ship sales that are going to drive CIG's funding and that will allow them to, continue to grow the company and make, have the kind of earnings that they're trying to do in order to develop what they want. It's going to be the microtransactions, and some subs as well. This diversified funding model, and as a percentage, you're going to see less and less of ship sales mattering to the overall income of CIG, and more to these other aspects of a diversified funding model. And that's where I think it's going with Star Citizen's future funding model. Everybody's like, "Oh, ships make them way too much money. They'll never stop selling ships." And it's like, you can already see the trends developing right now. It's kind of early, but you can see the trends of fewer and fewer people out of the overall population are willing to part with those big ticket ships. And as we get more and more people playing the game, you're not going to have the number of whales, the number of people willing to spend that money relative to the overall population is going to continue to go down. And CIG can't rely on ship sales to continue to grow the company. They have to diversify, and I think that's been the plan all along. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, and I think ship sales are going to continue to go down relative to the overall income over time, to where the CIG is probably going to be able to eventually keep that promise of stopping selling concept ships.
And even when they abandon selling ships, they don't, because you can buy UEC.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who want the skippable power, you just buy UEC instead of buying a ship. I imagine they'll make more tiers available for the UEC, so it more lines up with that way they keep their promise, and they still let people just jump the line to get an Idris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all weasel words. You'll still be able to buy ships in game. You'll be able to buy UEC because buying currency is always, it's going to be a thing. And they can keep their promise. They can continue to develop ships, because each time they develop a ship, they can develop the skins, and all, ships with interiors you'll be able to customize, and it's all part of the overall game universe, making it feel alive and interesting, but also, developing new ships is part of the things, just like adding new star systems to the game or expansions to game mechanics is what is going to keep people coming back every quarter to play the new patch. And if you keep people coming back, you keep exposing them to the microtransactions, and that's what gets them to buy stuff, And people can hate on it all they want, but it's consumer psychology and it works. And for me, if it gets Star Citizen and the game modes and the single player campaigns developed, I don't care. People can spend their money on whatever they want. This is one of my hobbies. People can spend $45 and nothing more on Star Citizen for all I care. It's entirely up to you. But I wouldn't consider it. I don't think of it as predatory marketing at all, because no one's forcing you. It's does this make you happy? Sweet. Click buy.
Yeah, it only becomes predatory like when you get like you're getting this now in a battle pass, but you could be getting this. That's predatory.
Yeah.
Not the entire world's or the entire game's items and ships are open to you, but you could also buy it on the website. That's not predatory at all.
Yeah. No, they do have to walk a fine line in terms of being upfront and open about it, and informing players and stuff like that. But you can tell people until you're blue in the face that you can buy all of this in game, with UEC that you earn. You can grind for all of this. It's just like anything else in any other MMO. But people are still going to be like, some people will grind for it. Other people will buy it. Some people will be a mix. It is what it is. But yeah, that's this is what I have for this evening's Scanner Anomaly. And I know we've been going on the Scanner Anomaly for about an hour now, and we're running close to 4 hours for the podcast total. But we talked a lot at the beginning, and we talked a lot about. Actually, I'm going to transition back to the other window. There we go. So yeah, but yeah, that's what we have for this evening. Nazeris, do you have any closing thoughts about anything, the Scanner Anomaly, what have you?
I think it's insane the amount of work you put into all these things, and it was a really good one. I can't wait to see the discussion in the comments on this one. Anytime somebody brings up money in Star Citizen, oh boy,
it's a little bit clickbaity, and I know it's probably I'm expecting a comment to say, I know some people will think that it is maybe even a little bit tone deaf with what's going on with 318, but I thought about this before. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Nazeris, get out of my head. Yeah.
That's why we're doing this show together.
Yeah. Everything going on with 318 is temporary, and it too will pass, and 319 will come, and 320 after that, and this is just
there's a reason why I kind of disconnect from the game during patch releases, because it's always the same stuff. It comes out, it's broken, the Spectrum and Reddit light up with the rees, and they just oh my god, this is the worst patch ever. It's never going to fix Star Citizen. Will always be a buggy game. 6 months later, we're hitting massive new records in concurrency and new players, and everyone's having a great time, and we start getting hyped for the next patch. So I disconnect when they start talking about oh my gosh, it's so broken. Shh. One, it's an alpha. You chose this life. 2, we've been here before. Are you so
emotionally invested in a patch for a video game?
Not even the game, just a patch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A patch isn't working as intended. That does not equal CIG shooting your dog. You don't need to go all verbal John Wick. It's not worth it.
On top of what you've said, I imagine that the entire microtransaction ecosystem for CIG will take a hit when they announce no more wipes. Because people were okay, so I don't need to spend money to make sure I have it on the next patch. I can just get a game and have it in the next patch. But with the amount of stuff that you talked about, couches, posters, bed sheets, pillows, body pillows, knickknacks, chessboard, books in the verse for your apartment, slippers, other clothing options. Depends on how interesting they want to go with the clothing options. And then you have pets still coming to the game. Pets were not announced, but pets were one of the starter goal or stretch goals. And then you got clothes for your pets. It's an MMO. They do that sort of thing. You got obviously paints for ships, and hopefully a greater customization coming later. And there'll be things you can put, you can put doodads anywhere. It's a dynamic the PS system. Yeah. So they could just have doodads ads as a category of microtransactions that are just around. And
Well,
on
and
top
all
of
these
that, they can use
things-
that entire system
All of these
in
things that
game
you
to
can
drive
put
playing
for,
it.
yeah, everything that you can for microtransactions, whether it's armor or guns or ship paints or things to hang on the walls, in your hangar, apartment, homestead, furniture, all collectibles. All of these things are very low effort in terms of being able to make them, and so CIG can hire a small army of new grad developers straight out of uni, who you don't have to pay them a crap ton of money. And I hate to say it, but you're the new guy. You're new to the industry. You have limited skills. Here's where you go to get experience making art assets and everything like that, things that you can animate, what have you. It lets them build their resume, and it lets CIG get all infinite customization options added to the game, dirt cheap. Not dirt cheap, but at far less money, because you were able to hire like I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the growth of the development team. All those aren't that growth in that development team isn't meant to be 600 senior experienced developers. It's like, no, CIG needs an army of people who are able to create variety for hab interiors, depending on where you're buying your hab, whether it's Sherman on Castra or any number of these landing zones. You're going to need a lot of people to create these art assets, to create the variety, so that way people get to feel unique. You're going to need a variety of people to create new armors and weapons and clothes and all these it goes on.
I can only
forever and
imagine
ever.
what the clothing teams, the character art teams are trying to hire right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did I put that window? I had it open. Hold on a second. Aha. So as far as jobs go at CIG, there's 5 in Los Angeles, 1 in Austin, 12 in Frankfurt, 62 in Manchester.
Woo.
And Turbulent will be hosted on the Cloud Imperium site for
What's
the
the
Montreal
math
studio.
on what that total
80
is?
of them.
Okay, so there's 80,
positions.
but that's a good thing. There's 80 positions open right now.
Yes.
And several.
That is not all of them. Remember, they want to grow this. This is just what they can hire today.
But yeah,
they want these numbers.
That number was 100.
Forward.
That number was 140 not several months ago. They're hiring like crazy, and it's a good thing. People have been worried that
hasn't even opened yet.
Yeah, Montreal is open, but you have to go look at their website and see how many people they're hiring, and we don't know if they're being hired for the CIG side of the house, the Star Citizen side of the house, or
it does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
It does. One of them is Montreal, or not Montreal, Turbulent specific. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are Star Citizen.
Heinous Animal just gave me a follow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for following the project.
You also
and
missed Blizzrad.
And then, but Heinous Animal also donated $5 to StackUp.org. So thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you were here earlier, and you caught that part, but everything goes to Stack Up. Everything goes to charity. Oh my God, Blizzard.
And then Blizzard subbed.
Yeah. Oh, Blizzard subbed again. Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's everybody's like, oh, they're losing people faster than they can. No, we just looked at the charts, and we're looking at them growing year after year, and we can see from months ago the open jobs was 140, now it's 80 something. So they've hired 50 plus people over the last several months. They're closing in on that goal of and that number was the difference between 860 and 1,000. That size goal that they're looking at, and they're closing in on that goal. That's where they want to be before the end of the year. I'm saying it right. Heinous Animal Zero said, just catching now, vet myself, play to escape. Awesome. Thank you for your service. Much appreciated. Yep, That's why I play video games, and that's why I have, I started this little community because I enjoy hanging out with all of you people, and by you people I mean everybody in chat and Nazeris and the Armchair Admirals and general people and all the people in my Discord, Paul's Discord. This is, I'm a dad and I have a full-time job and a half. You guys are my friends. This is my equivalent of hanging out on the front porch drinking beer with the neighbors. Yeah.
What do you mean,
you people? You know exactly what I mean, Blizzrad. You people, you people and your war crimes. But yeah,
what? I haven't committed any in the past 4 hours.
Nazeris, you're guilty by association. You are far too involved with this to not be brought in under suspicion just by proximity to Blizzrad. And Ghost 1800 is just as bad.
Per my agreement with the UEE, I'm not allowed to be convicted of any war crimes in association with or doing any myself. I need to make sure to keep it on the DL, okay? I just don't tell the UEE, just don't tell the advocacy, okay?
Yeah. Secret safe with me, I'm going to be in Tyrol, avoiding the law like crazy. Shempasta, I'm former active duty infantry marine, and I'm currently a Army National Guard critical care flight paramedic. So that's what I still do in the military. I'm just on active duty orders with the National Guard at a course right now. So I'm away from home for an extended period. Just training and education stuff. Super easy, pretty chill.
Yep.
But yeah, it is almost 11 o'clock, and I have to be up pretty early, and it's even later.
12 o'clock.
Yeah, it's even later for you, Naz. Heinous Animal says, have watched your YouTube videos. I enjoy the content. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Or, sorry. Thank you, man, woman, child, dog, whatever you identify with.
Just thank you.
I try to respect everybody. But yeah, thank you so much for that. This will be up on YouTube towards the end of the week. And I always, you're probably aware. Yeah, dude. Yep, dude is the thing. I'm from NorCal. I'm from Tahoe. I dude everything. Every inanimate object is a dude, especially if I'm frustrated. But yeah. Oh, so no, we already talked about that. Yeah, that's good. Yep. And then keep an eye out on Space Tomato, because he's working on editing it. But for his 100th episode of either Launch Sequence or Citizen Central, I forget which one it was, he interviewed, did little short interviews with a bunch of content creators, including Nazeris and I, tying it all together in one video. So you should be seeing that pretty soon. And we're probably we're trying to figure out scheduling of when we can be back up on the Launch Sequence podcast with Space Tomato. So hopefully we'll get that done soon. But yeah, I gotta call it a night. Let's find somebody to raid. Naz, do you have any suggestions?
Who do I have open? Currently in my follows list, the only person playing Star Citizen is Kitty 8 Cupcake. But they have almost 300 people, so probably somebody smaller.
Chat, do me a favor. Why don't we... Let's see.
In recommended, manager, there is raid. Xylotext and Momis308. What time or what day were we looking at being back?
Saturday? Do you want to do Saturday for monthly reports?
22nd or 15th? 15th is this Saturday. 22nd is next Saturday.
Hold on, let me look at my calendar real quick.
Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now.
Chat, do me a favor, chat. If you guys will find somebody that you guys think that we should raid, somebody who could use the viewers, let's bump their numbers up and help somebody out, somebody in need. So our bye week is the first week of May. So either, yeah, so if we do it like this 15th, it'll be out on YouTube the week of the 16th. And then the 19th is the next Roadmap Roundup.
Oh, it's Moms.
And so that Roadmap Roundup, we'll do that one with your scanner anomaly, and we can do that on the 22nd, 23rd, whichever works better for you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Those
so yeah,
I do have off that evening. Yes.
Those of you in chat, if you want to come and hang out with us when we go over the monthly reports, we'll be doing that this Saturday. I'll put the event in my Discord, and I'll also put out notices on my Twitter. And then, yeah, so this Saturday, the 15th, and the following Saturday, the 22nd, we'll be covering the next Roadmap Roundup, kind of like we did today. And Nazeris will have your scanner anomaly for that evening. But yeah, did we think of someone to raid? Twitch.tv moms308.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay, let's see. How do I spell that?
I don't know if it's Moms or if it's Mo. I don't know. Who knows? They know. Go ask them what it is.
There we go. It looks like they're playing with Microsoft Paint.
Yep. Not streaming, just talk. I don't know if they're just like in the middle of something.
All right.
There's sub bars blocking it, so I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know what they're doing either. You guys are going to find out for us and report back. Not streaming, just talking, actually. Sure. Whatever.
So are we.
We got 17 viewers, so. All right, starting the raid. And 13 viewers are ready to raid. 15 viewers. All right, everybody ready? Raid now.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Sorry, out.